If you're anything like me, you probably got stuck at some point with a setup like this, where you're directly feeding food from a foraging trail straight to your queen. While this seems like the most obvious thing to do at the start, it doesn't leave much room for expandability. At some point, you'll probably realize that this single trail of food isn't enough to sustain your queen for population growth, and that you'll be stuck at a certain stage. You might want to, at this point, feed it more food from a second trail, but how would you get that into the queen since it only has one input? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you a way to create an easy scalable setup that will allow you to harvest all the food on your map. For this to work, you're going to need the divider gate and the counter gate. If you don't have the divider and the counter gate yet, just follow your instincts on the top right and it won't be long before you unlock these two basic gates. Now, placing your queen near the largest food source might be the most intuitive early game thing to do, and that makes perfect sense. But in fact, we can abuse the storage system stockpile to put our queen anywhere. Let me show you how that might work. If you put a stockpile on your trail, your food will now get stockpiled in there, and now we can place a dispenser. But dispensers don't need to be placed near their food pile. We can in fact place this dispenser anywhere on the map, and it will dispense the food out of there, out of the dispenser magically. Knowing this mechanic, it now no longer matters where you place your queen relative to the food. In fact, it is better to move your queen somewhere central on the island. For example, I would love to place my queen somewhere right here, although I have some big rubble deposits to contend with, so I'm going to just choose a nice open area that's reasonably central, like over here. For the purpose of this guide, I'm going to be putting down some foundations so that you guys can see the pathing a little bit easier, but foundations are not necessary if you haven't unlocked them yet. I'm going to move my queen to the very central area on my foundations. Now, near the input of my queen, I'm going to set up a few more floor tiles to feed it our food from the dispensers. So using the mechanic that I showed before, where we can place a dispenser for the stockpile anywhere, we can set up stockpiles on as many foraging trails as we like and place it somewhere close to our queen. For example, like this. Then here I have a second foraging trail harvesting the energy orbs. I can do a similar thing by placing down a stockpile. And then I can add the dispenser by pressing Z and place that near my queen as well. Let's harvest some more energy orbs from patches on the other side of the map, for example. So I'll draw in my foraging trails. And we'll draw in a second foraging trail here. We'll put down a stockpile on each of the foraging trails, like such. Then we'll select the stockpile and we'll place the dispenser near our queen. And just like that, we can see that our queen now has access to food from 4 different dispensers or 4 different foraging trails. I've just set up 4, but you can of course grab all the food from all over the map and set up as many dispensers as you want, depending on what level of population you want. Now that our dispensers are near our queen, we can set up a short hauling trail to feed the queen the food. On this hauling trail, I recommend you use one of your sentry ants that have infinite life. And now you can see it will grab food from the dispenser and feed it to the queen. Next, we have to deal with the queen's larva. You'll want to access your population menu and place as many incubators as you require, depending on your larva rate. For 10 larvae per minute, 3 incubators seems like a good number. I'm just going to place a few more floor tiles to give myself room. And then we'll just give a little bit of space over here and we'll place 3 of our incubators. Just like that. Now we set up another hauling trail from the queen's output into the incubators. Just a little tip, the shorter these are, the faster it will take the larva into the incubator. And once again, I recommend you use your infinite life sentry ants for this process, just in case anything goes wrong, because this is a pretty critical process for maintaining your population. The final step in this process involves actually making these ants go onto these trails. For that, we're going to use these divider and counter gates that I mentioned earlier. I'm just going to put down a few more floor tiles so we have some room to work. I like to start with my counter gates. So you will need as many counter gates as you have trails. So we have 4 trails. I'm going to set up 4 counter gates. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you will need a 5th counter gate to send ants up to this hauling trail to supply your queen with food. So we'll add 1 extra. If you are wondering what counter gates are, it's a little bit out of scope of this video, but essentially what happens with a counter gate is if you have a path leading into the counter gate, if the ants on the path after the counter gate hasn't reached the number of your counter, it will allow an ant through. Otherwise, it will send an ant on an alternate path. So for example, if my counter over here was set to 5, ants coming in this path will check whether this path has 5 ants or not. If it doesn't, it will go down this path. If it does, it will go up this path if this one's full. So how can we use that to our advantage over here? We have 5 different paths. They're all set at 1 by default. And we need to divide the ants that are coming out of these incubators into these 5 different paths. To do that, we need to use this divider. So I'm going to set up a divider that goes from here into each one of these paths. Now, ants coming into this divider will go into each of these paths one after the next. Every time it goes down one path, the divider will pick the next path to go onto. But once these counter gates are full, we need the ants to have somewhere to go. So that's where we're going to build a null trail. If you don't have null trails for whatever reason, I think they are a researched item somewhere. But if you don't have this null trail, don't worry, just use a regular hauling trail. But I have these null trails, so I'm going to use them. So we just link the input of the counter gates together. That way the ants have somewhere to go if all of these paths are full. We're going to bring that out to the side a little bit to create a little bit of a buffer, and then that's going to lead it back into the divider. So basically what the ants are going to do when they hit this trail, they're going to pick one of these 5 and then go down these trails. But if these trails are full, they're just going to go sit in this buffer and wait till one of these gates requires more ants. Once you have this set up, all you have to do is set up the output of these incubators to join to the start of the divider. Now ants will come out of the incubators and they will go onto our 5 trails. I recommend you set your first trail to go directly back up and feed into the hauling trail that we set up earlier. And now we can set the numbers for each of these trails. A good idea is just to set each one to 5 to start with, and then we can adjust the numbers as we go. So just select your counter gates and set them all to 5. Now our setup is pretty much complete. What we want to do is link all of these gates into one of these paths. So for example, I'm going to set a null trail. And again, if you don't have null trails, you just use hauling trails. But the first one I'm going to grab and bring all the way over to this side, and it's going to link into this path. So we have our first path to get to this foraging trail. Now we'll set up a second path. So from this second gate, we will go out into this path. For our third gate, we're going to have to, well, third and fourth gate, we're going to have to go out this way. It doesn't really matter for the purposes of this demo, but I'm just going to set mine to go down this way. And I'm going to set this one to follow that path as well. And then we're going to go up this way and navigate around my giant rock. And then we're going to send one path down this way. And then we're going to send one path down this way. Now, if you've set up everything correctly, you should be able to just hit play and watch the magic happen. So we can see as ants hatch, they're going to pick one of these paths, and then if the path is not full, they're going to go do their job. This ant is going up into the hauling trail to feed the queen. This ant is now hatching, and now it's going to pick one of the other paths, and it's going to go over to this side to get to this foraging trail. We'll let the game run, and we'll talk about what's happening as it goes. We can see with the rate at which these 2 sentry ants and 10 larvae per minute and 3 incubators, we are getting plenty of ants and they're slowly filling up all of the paths. After quite some time, you can see most of our paths are filled or nearly all filled, and we can see that each one of the paths is gathering food and all that food is being consumed by the queen. You can very easily tell whether you are getting a surplus of food or not by looking at these stockpiles. At the moment, all our food is being consumed, but that will soon change as we get even more ants onto each path. Now we can see when all of our trails are full. At the moment I've set them all to 5, we're starting to get a surplus of ants, and they're just going to keep running around in these buffers. When you have a surplus of ants, you can decide what to do with them. You should go and observe your hauling trails and look at how many energy orbs are on these flowers compared to what's on the stockpile. For example, this massive path here probably needs more than 5 ants. So you can trace your path back and go, okay, maybe I need 10 ants on this path. And once you've set it, the buffer will eventually make their way all onto this path, and they will go and saturate it. We can see this path over here is mostly harvesting all the energy orbs, but maybe it can use like 1 or 2 more, so maybe we'll just set that to 7. And then these 2 paths, you can see 5 is perfectly fine for this path because there's barely any energy orbs here. Maybe you could add a 6th one over here. Eventually, you're going to get so many ants with this method that you will have more ants than you know what to do with. By then, you can very easily add more paths to get even more food. It's very easy to add to this system. We can just add more counter gates like this, and make sure you add the divider path onto this, and add your null trail back out. Just like that, we've created another pathway now, and now we have an extra gate over here. Here my ants are getting stuck because this path has nowhere to go, but you know, you can very easily now set up a 3rd food trail, say over here now. Once I've let this system run for even longer, we can see we're starting to get a surplus of food while these 2 stockpiles are empty. We can see this stockpile is filling up with a surplus of food, and our ants are pretty much continuously bringing food to the queen now. Now that you have a huge surplus of ants, you can obviously purpose them to do other things like mining or cutting plants. But if you're starting out in the game, I would recommend you do this instead. Gather yourself 120 research points. It's a little bit out of scope on this video on how to use inventor ants, but just follow your instincts until you figure out how inventor ants works and how to get research points. And once you have 100 research points, you'll want to go up this path past the radio tower. And once you've got 50 ants in your colony, you'll unlock this thing called an old gate. I recommend you get the old gate, then you get the elder trail, which should cost 50 each. I still have 20 points left. Now, once you have your old gate, instead of using your brand new ants to create more advanced ants, you should repurpose your older ants to do that. Let me show you how that works very quickly. So over here in this trail, we've got 5 ants and they're continuously getting old and dying. So instead of them dying, we can put down an old gate. Make sure you put it past your stockpile because this doesn't work if they're carrying things. And what the old gate will do, it will take basically the oldest ants from the trail and send them out this path. See how an old ant now came over here to die? If I do the same thing on this side and take an old gate after my stockpile, and then we'll use an elder trail to bring it close to this one, and bring an elder trail over here, we now have old ants coming from 2 different food trails. And now we're going to repurpose this into new ants by using a combiner. So if you go to your population, you should have this combiner by now, and you'll be able to build it. And now we can send all our oldest ants over this side. So we'll use elder trails and we'll bring it in here. Now if we hit play, we can see our oldest ants will eventually come down these elder trails and combine. And once they combine, their lifespan will be renewed. If we put another trail over here, we can see when they combine, we get a brand new worker ant with a 10-minute lifespan. This is how I like to get more advanced ants rather than just combining them straight out of the queen. So essentially what we're doing is we're sending all our ants to go to work foraging food, and once they become old, we're repurposing them to become brand new, more advanced ants to do more advanced tasks. For example, this guy can now go plant cutting. Or we can put something like this using a divider trail. We can send it into another combiner, for example. Then we can combine 2 different worker ants and start creating inventor ants. And there we go, we've combined our worker ants into a brand new inventor ant ready for research. And remember, this system is completely scalable, so if you need even more ants, you can very easily add more incubators if you have a surplus of larvae. If you need more food, you can just add new foraging trails onto your energy orb sources and just add more dispensers along here and expand this trail and add even more ants on there for even more food to the queen. But this should definitely give you a much cleaner and more scalable start than just putting your queen directly onto a food trail. If this video has helped you out, don't forget to leave a like and sub. And if you're looking for something to watch in the meantime, I have a Let's Play series on my channel. You can go check that out. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.